give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is gonna go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? After a long month hiatus, your boys are back. The Wolves of Wall Street, your favorite draft analyst. It's the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. My name is Corey Tulaba, and I'm here finally back with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. Albert, what is going on, my man?
A lot is going on. It's been a really fun and interesting time for us at No Ceilings NBA. We're introducing new people and new pieces and new everything. Our own pod here has gotten a facelift here. We got a new intro video and we got some new branding. A lot's going on, Corey. I tried to prepare myself for this pod and for this new season by watching The Wolf of Wall Street recently. And I feel amped up and I feel like it was the right thing to do. I feel like we're back. It's been crazy. We haven't recorded in like 4 or 5 weeks. I was texting Corey the other day. I was like, we went on our Bill Simmons summer vacation is what it is, and now we're back and ready to get crazy. So it feels good. I'm excited.
Yeah, I moved, and apparently that there's a lot more that goes into that than I had anticipated. So we're doing makeshift podcasting on my end. I mean, I have my whole setup, but I'm in my kitchen. That's why my lighting is all jacked up. But eventually, my new office is going to be alive and well, and we're going to be flying once we get into mid-season form here. But look, man, I'm excited just to talk hoops in general with you since it's been a while. We're texting and whatnot, but to actually sit and watch film and break down this class, because the last time we talked, we didn't have actual game film.
Yeah.
And now we do. Now we have game film for these guys, which is really, really exciting. So we're going to cover 2 potential top 5 picks in the 2024 NBA draft today in Perth's Alex Sarr and the G League Ignite's Mattis Buzelis. So, Albert, I'm going to give you the opportunity to decide who we cover first, because I think, we could have a lengthy discussion on, either one of these guys.
Yeah, this is actually a tough one, just because I feel differently about both guys. But I think starting with Alexander Sarr is fun, and I think we should start with some fun. We've been gone for a long time.
We most certainly have. Sarr was super interesting as a prospect for me, because this is a guy that I was skeptical about heading into the year, if we're going to be completely honest. He was a guy that I got an opportunity to watch live a few times last year when he was down with the Overtime Elite. And, it was one of those things where that impression that I got, it was just, I felt like this was a kid that, was pretty far away. And so when he was getting certain expectations on him as potential number 1 overall pick, top 5 guy, I was just like, I need to see it, before I can get on board with that, because what I had seen previously, I was like, look, if somebody else wants to take a shot, go get it, right? Like, get after it. He just might not be for me. But almost immediately, right, in these G League Ignite showcase games, it was like, okay, he has taken a major leap. Because the tools were always there. Like, that much was apparent. He is a toolsy dude who can clearly impact the game in a multitude of ways. The question was, like, was he actually going to impact the game, or was he going to be more so a guy like Mo Bamba, who looked like he had all the tools, but was really much more flash than substance. And I like Bamba, So having kind of gotten burned on that end, I felt like I was a little hesitant.
Yeah. Corey, I think we might have to check your audio. Seems like it's coming in staticky. I don't know if it's the input.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said,
Well, you
I
sound
am in
good
an
now.
I'm in an echoey room. And do I sound okay now?
Now it came back again.
Hmm.
Wonder what it is. But in the meantime, I can't talk about Alexander Sarr, dude. I think what you're talking about, right? What we saw initially from the exhibitions, there was a lot to like, a lot to get excited by, a lot to. I think Corey, I think where you were going with that monologue was that I think it seems like he changed your mind a little bit, and it seems like he may have kind of turned the tides a little bit in terms of how you feel about his game and how you feel about his future, because he put on quite the display, dude. Being there in Nevada, I feel like he was really able to show off a lot on both ends of the floor. Obviously, we're going to get into the nitty gritty, the more detailed breakdown of his offense and defense. But I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, Corey, was the kind of the attitude, the ferocity that he played with. It seemed like he knew what the moment meant, and it seemed like he wasn't afraid and wasn't going to back down to anybody. Kind of like what we saw with Scoot last year when Victor rolled up, but kind of like switching places, right? It just felt like Sarr was like, here, I'm gonna come out. I'm going to show out. I'm not going to be afraid of anybody. He had a couple tense moments with Ron Holland after that huge block that clip that you showed. He kind of stood over him, gave him a look. There was another possession where Sarr was kind of guarding him one-on-one, kind of put him in jail, to be honest, and clapping in his face. And there was like an attitude to him that I really enjoyed, and that I think was a good precursor to what we'll be watching in terms of his play throughout the NBL season, kind of seeing how he progresses, but also keeping that same energy and intensity.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we should start on the defensive end, right? And you mentioned the clip where he clamps Ron Holland, and I'm going to pull that up right now, because that clearly made the rounds, and it was a clip in which he really, he didn't get a counting stat off of it. It was just like, Ron Holland can't do anything right now. He is just
terrorizing.
He's like you said, he's in jail with him, man. And the fact that, Holland is 6'7", 6'8" in that range, and Sarr is 7'1", and he is sliding stride for stride for stride with him, you can start talking to yourself that this guy's defensive potential and the versatility that he has shown, not only as a rim protector, which we'll show, but just as a switchable guy on a guy who might also be the number one pick and a potential go-to scoring option at some point down the line. The fact that he can clamp those guys up too, it's an incredibly impressive skill set.
No, I'm with you, man. To be as large, as tall as he is, to be sliding his feet, staying in front of him like that. I also thought it was hilarious that throughout the broadcast, they kept comparing him. They kept comparing Ron Holland to Russell Westbrook, and I was really confused by that comparison, listening to that 12 times throughout the broadcast. But to watch Sarr slide his feet, stay in front, switching hips, using his length as a threat as well, like all of that was so intriguing to watch, and really makes you think, like you said, Corey, like the impact that he can bring, both as a rim protector and a guy who can switch out and guard smaller guys. Obviously, I don't think either one of us are saying that he's going to be guarding point guards full time, but if you can do it in a pinch, if you could do it off a switch and cause problems like he did against Ron Holland there, that's the type of stuff that NBA front office guys are going to watch that clip and be like, cool. So we know he can do that. Let's just add on top of that. So ultimately, when you're looking at prospects, and I've been thinking about that a lot during our break, Corey, like thinking about how we view prospects and all that stuff. Like sometimes it's although we're called no ceilings and we're looking at what these players can become, it is also really important to establish and to have a clear understanding of what their floors look like as well. And I think that clip right there does establish that Sarr has some stuff to him defensively that makes his floor even really interesting.
Yeah, and look, I think the defense was always kind of the safest thing, just because, you know, even in this clip where he's one-on-one with Holland, and this time Holland's going to get the shot off. Even in this clip, like, Holland's able to stop on a dime, and Sarr is kind of backpedaling, right? But he's still able to recover because of those tools. And when you have those tools, I think, you know, you can get by with coming along a little bit slower. The thing is, it feels like every game he's getting better, you know, and that's the thing that's really, really, really encouraging. You know, I think that you could put him in any kind of scheme, and he's going to find a way to contribute, whether it is, you know, forcing guys to move off the ball, whether it's, you know, blocking guys' shots, or just being a rim deterrent, you know, whatever the case is. You know, it just feels like, you know, here he comes out of nowhere to get Buzelis at the rim, and then he stuffs him a second time on the cut there. I mean, that's just really, really fun stuff. Like, and, you know, we're going to talk about Mattis and some of the issues he has as a rim finisher, but the fact that this guy can just patrol the paint, roam around, he has the wherewithal to see his man, see the ball, and then ultimately come over, see where it's going, quick second jump. It's just really fun.
No, I'm with you, Corey. I think fun is the right word. And I think a lot of scouts and front office execs and coaches that are watching this type of film, I think they'll feel exactly the same. I think they'll be like, holy crap, this kid looks like a lot of fun. You start kind of, you know, you see a player like this with that type of fluidity as an athlete, with those type of instincts and athletic ability as well. You start licking your lips, you know, you start going, damn, like, what can we, and of course, like, all coaches believe in their developmental ability, right? You start to wonder, like, okay, what can we do with a kid like this? You know, how much more can he grow? How much more can he blossom into an absolutely terrifying defender? And it's hard not to watch these types of clips and go like, wow, like, beyond just the impact, right? Like, once again, like Corey, like you mentioned, it's just fun to think about what he can become. And then we see a clip like this where he's flying out to the 3-point line, just deterring shots. And as we know, and Corey, like you talk about all the time when we're talking about impact on defense, it's not always the counting stats. And even before, when he locked up Ron Holland like that, didn't get any type of stat at all for that. But it's the impact that you make. It's the influence that you have. It's, you know, that second thought that you put into an offensive player because of what you're capable of. And I think that's the type of stuff that really gets you excited about a guy like Alexander Sarr.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't remember a guy that I've done a 180 on any more than Sarr. You know, I remember, you know, a friend of the show, Bryce Simon, who is, you know, new co-host for Sam Vecini in the Game Theory podcast. Right. You know, he was texting me about Sarr. He was so excited about him, and just based on what I had seen last year, I was like, yeah, man, like, I don't know. He's not for me. Like, I think he's really far away, and like, I get it. Like, I really do. But the game moved so fast, and it seems like now the game is slowed down for him. Mm. And when you add in the fact that now he's starting to process things on both ends at a much quicker rate, and then you freeze this right here. Okay. And then you add on the tools. When we talk about tools, look at this.
Yeah.
He's at the free throw line. He's at the free throw line with his hand down in this clip, man. And he not only gets a shot contest here on a guy who is mid-shot.
Yeah.
You know, he gets a piece.
Yeah.
It looks, you know, and like, that is crazy, crazy stuff, man. Like, that is a real deal, impactful shot contest. And look, it's a 7-point game with 50 seconds left, but like, it's still a game. It's not as if the game is completely over at that point. He is, he's got a knack for really altering things. And, you know, it's valuable, man. It's really valuable for how the NBA is played at this point.
No, I'm with you, man. I mean, there used to be a time where we were amazed by James White taking off from the free throw line and doing amazing dunks, and now we're getting the opposite, right? We're getting guys flying out from there to block shots or, digging on all kinds of stuff, man, defensively. And I think with Sarr, I'm with you, Corey. It's we just have to keep nailing home the point that it's a lot of fun. And to think that the season is just starting now, and we're already getting these types of flashes and this type of production from him down there in the NBL, and to think about what he's going to look like by the end of the season, and then he'll probably come over for the combine and do all kinds of stuff over there. And I just, and also, he's a French guy. Who knows? He might really impress during those meetings, and people might really fall in love with his character and all that stuff. There's so much to be excited by, and I think defensively, this along with the rebounding and the type of impact he can have, just cleaning up the boards and being just intimidating. And like even going back, Corey, to the clips you posted with him in Holland, just like his presence, like he was like all over him, and just like it just felt like he was towering over him and almost taunting him with his presence. And I think that's the type of stuff that gets you thinking. Nah, I'm not gonna say it's like a 1-for-1 comparison, but those are the types of moments, and that's the type of attitude that gets you thinking like, oh, could this guy be like a KG type of defender one day? I'm not saying that he will be, but I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me once again is like that ferocity that he played with. And then you obviously go back to everything you've talked about, right, with the ability and the instincts or whatever. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot to get excited by.
Now, like you mentioned KG, and it sounds on the surface like blasphemous. And don't get me wrong, Kevin Garnett putting those kind of expectations on any player is blasphemous to a point. But I mean, this is a kid who's raw, he's skinny, but he has something special about him defensively in following suit with the bigs that we've seen in the last, this will be 4 in a row now with Mobley, Chet, Wembanyama, and now Sarr. Like, I mean, this kind of archetype of player is something that every team is going to covet. And if Sarr keeps having the season he's having, like he is going to end up being picked in the top 3, like based on the most recent history, because he offers things at that position that nobody else does, as, a guy who you go, hey, maybe this guy could win a Defensive Player of the Year award, at some point.
No, Corey, I'm with you. And I think I love what Breaking the Game just said in our comment section, right? He said, I think how he moves is so important. He just looks like an NBA big, reminds me of AD just in how he moves, not the handle. And I agree with that. That's something that I wrote in my notes too. I think it's almost jarring to see how fluid he is as an athlete. He genuinely looks really comfortable moving around. And I also felt like just how fluid he moves and how quick he moves for his size and how like functional it all looks. Like I thought that in itself also looked pretty intimidating. Like when we think back to like, as you mentioned, right, Mobley, Chet, Victor, all of them, when you see them moving around the court the way that they do at their size, all that stuff is like really jacked up. It's like you look at these guys and you're just like, how is it possible that you're that big and you move around like this? And I think Sarr kind of has that factor to him as well. I love that point, right? Like I think the fluidity is kind of a part of his game, and I think is really important. I think also, I've always been kind of like a body type guy, and I think he's like really proportionate. Other than like his really long arms, like his body just looks really proportionate as well. He uses it well. It looks really good and fluid. There's a lot to like.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about like watching somebody like that size move around. And I think one of the things that maybe gave me like kind of, some issues in Sarr, the player, and I think it more so reared its head on the offensive end than the defensive end. But like the first time I saw him was on a high school court. And he is so large and so long, and the guys that, were playing in the games are so large and so long that sometimes, maybe the fact that a high school court isn't as large as a normal professional size court that they're playing on, that it maybe kind of hurts them a little bit, because maybe they can recover at certain spots defensively, but like on the other end, maybe it also like it gets in their way, so I think just thinking that's something that I've tried to keep in mind. But look, he's not perfect either defensively. Like he's still got areas to improve on. I think like here is a good example of, he's not really being physical with Bobby Klintman on the drive here. And basically anytime anyone's been physical with Klintman on a drive, he's coughed the ball up or like lost control of it. So far in the NBL season, like he's not physically strong enough. And this is just two guys who neither one of them have the strength to, or like the wherewithal to like kind of body up here. Like, I do think there is almost like a finesse to how Sarr defends. Like he can close space really well and use his length, but he doesn't really body up on the move. And I don't know if that's super important for him, because I think mostly, he'll be playing out in a drop and playing cat and mouse, or maybe he'll be switchable and trying to force guys into outside shots. But, I think it's hard for somebody his size to, like, when you see a ball handler who is, 6'9", 6'10", like Klintman, you might need to bump him off his spot a little bit, because that height advantage, that size advantage isn't, the same as it is on a much smaller guy. So that is something that I noticed with him. And I think it manifests sometimes as a rebounder too. I think sometimes when he really wants to go after a rebound, he gets up and he'll rip one down. But a lot of times, just the avoiding kind of, really bodying up and trying to, win like a 50-50 rebound without jumping higher than somebody, I think that manifests there as well.
No, I'm with you, dude. Just watching this clip, it kind of just looks like he's shadowing him, which, it could come from a lot of different things. I don't know. I was even thinking as far as like, does it come from soccer? I don't even know if he played soccer, but like, I know center backs in soccer, they kind of shadow their guy, whatever. But Corey, I'm with you. Like, I think it's, but then also, Corey, like, I also think that's a thing that like coaches will look at and be like, oh, I can fix that. Like,
for sure.
I can make him, more physical or whatever. And I think like when I look at his physique and I look at, his body, he is skinny now. I agree with you there. But I also think, Corey, I don't think you don't think this, but I think he's going to put on good mass too. Like you look at his shoulders, you look at his overall physique, and it looks like he's going to put on some mass there, and he's going to get a lot stronger. But the physicality has to come with it. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. And, I've been trying to think like, who are kind of like his NBA doppelgangers? You know what I mean? And like, when I think of guys his age and you look at, a guy like Joel Embiid or Anthony Davis, like they were way skinnier in their college years too. Mm-hmm. Like they had excellent frames. I think their frames were at a better starting point than Sarr. I think their shoulders were a little broader. But like the point I'm trying to make is like, he's going to get stronger. Like his body's going to fill out, and, just by way of the natural progression of his frame, like he's going to, be able to put on the kind of weight that will help him embrace some of that physicality a little bit more.
I think, Corey, a guy whose frame that started off worse than Sarr's probably is Giannis's, right? I think
yeah.
When Giannis first came in. And so, I'm with you, Corey. Like and also you always talk about the grown man strength stuff. Like that's definitely going to come in as well. And one last thing, like you mentioned the rebounding. I 100% agree. Like he wasn't like Paul Millsap at Louisiana Tech, like just, boxing out everyone and grabbing every single board. He is one of these guys that just like likes to jump really high and try to grab one. But also like that's kind of the lost art, right, in basketball of boxing out. But like it's I still think he's like pretty good at it, but of course he's not perfect, and it's not like the old school rebounding that maybe we grew up on. But he's gigantic and he's athletic, so he'll kind of stumble into a few once in a while.
100%. Now I want to pivot to his offense for a little bit, and I want to go through some of the clips that from when I saw him at the Hustle and Heart Classic here in New Jersey. And you see a clip like this, I want to start with the positive stuff. And you see a guy who like just stands out as a natural athlete, right? Like catching the lob, throwing it down, monster dunk, and like that's gonna make the highlight reel. But what scared me about his offense is like outside of the stuff that I saw like in like layup lines, which is the dunk parts were awesome, but the shot was crazy. His shot in game, and it's one game or whatever here, he like wasn't even close on as a shooter. Like you could look at the form and be like, all right, like he looks like he's gonna be a good shooter, and then the misses were so bad that I was like, it's possible like he needs glasses. Or like contacts, because woof, like just not even close. And then I saw him at the OT Pro Day again. And, he was definitely doing some impressive stuff there again, athletically, but like, the shot was much more of a idea than a reality. And again, here, like, he's not even hitting the rim on this attempt. And I was like, all right, like it's cool that he's trying to shoot threes, but like, is it something he's actually going to be able to do in the league? Like, if he's getting thrown off by 5'10" Jahad Pettiford on this contest here in the 2-3, like what's going to happen with real length? So I was a little nervous about the offense, but he's been a pretty good shooter so far.
Corey, I just want to say really quick, I know I'm interrupting you, but I think it's hilarious just because like the Corey that I've known throughout the years is like, I feel like once you're kind of like set on a guy, it's hard to change your mind. Not that you don't change your mind, but I feel like because you really, really take a long time to decide on a guy, and to be on this podcast right now and to hear you changing your tune live as we're recording is pretty hilarious. Oh my goodness.
No, I mean, look, I think the guy's clearly put in work.
Yeah.
He went under the radar in the overtime elite. Everybody was focused on the Thompson twins. And, the one thing that I'll say about the overtime elite program is people can talk about it as, the gameplay being awful. And we sure have. Yeah. We are, guilty as charged. But the actual training that these guys get, and I even think a lot of the coaching and instruction that these guys get is really, really, really high level stuff. And they are playing against other talented guys, so it's not as if they're in some rinky dink league. Like they're working, they're getting better every day, even if the on-court product and the stylistic product there, felt at times like it was more geared for social media clicks than not. Like behind the scenes, these guys had all the resources available to get better. And it's clear that Sarr has, because he's shooting it confidently and he's knocking down shots. So like, look, I don't know if this is going to sustain at a high level where, he's going to all of a sudden be this, 38% 3-point shooter or something. Like, I doubt that. But he doesn't need to be that. So like, as long as he's just knocking down these pick and pop threes, when he's in space and they look good, like that's really valuable, because I think that's something that when we look at Evan Mobley, we go back to that. Like, what is the flaw in his game that's preventing him from taking another leap? It's like he has to become a guy who could space the floor a little bit, especially playing with Jared Allen. And so far, he hasn't been able to do that. Even it looks like potentially he could. It seems as if Sarr is showing that like he's willing to make sure that he can do that when he gets to the league.
Corey, I think the most important thing that we need to kind of lock down here, and you mentioned it in passing as well, but whether it's the shots that we're seeing right now here on the screen or the threes that he hit during the G League Ignite exhibitions, the quality of the shot were excellent. And they were all off of, pick and pop action with him being literally wide open, and he's nailing them. Right. And I think that's important. Like, I feel like if he's taking these shots within the flow of the offense, with him being pretty open or wide open, I think these are good shots. And the fact that, as you mentioned, Corey, that he's working on them and that he's, putting in the reps to get to a place where he's an adequate enough shooter to take these shots with the type of confidence that he has, I think that's what's most important. Even in that G League Ignite game, I think it was the second game, he took 2 in a row and he was calling for the ball, and they're the same thing, just same action right here off the pick and roll, and he was just nailing them two shots in a row. And I think that's the type of stuff where, you know, you start to get excited, right? Like that's not going to be his bread and butter, right? The bread and butter for him is going to be pick and roll, you know, him diving to the rim and them doing all kinds of fun stuff there. Maybe once in a while, throw him a paint touch, a post up for him to, you know, try to do some stuff, which we'll talk about after this, I'm sure. But then also if he can throw in, you know, 1, 2, maybe 3 3-pointers like this per game, and he can hit him at a good rate, then we're talking about him being, you know, like, I don't know, 17, 18 point per game scorer, considering all that, you know, combined.
And I agree with everything that you said. And even beyond the pick and pop, I think something that he's shown a little bit, like in flashes where it looks like, oh, this might be something he could take advantage of. And then we talk about his ability to kind of attack the rim with the ball in his hands as well. He like this little fake handoff action. And then if he has space, he's letting it fly. And this seems like it's something that he's worked on. It's something he feels comfortable with. It's something he has the green light to take. It's like, okay, you're not going to get up on me. Like, I'm willing to let it fly, man. And he's shooting with this confidence in which I think is much different than he shot with last year. Last year, it seemed like he was shooting because he wanted to expand that part of his game. And this year, it seems like he's shooting because he knows that he can make them. And, you know, I think that that's a really, really awesome development for him. Now, I also don't want him to get shot happy with the 3-point shot. I do want him to take good ones, you know, like I don't want him to have to settle for a lot of shots. Like, you know, I mean, it's early in the game, early offense. He's kind of open, but like, you know, I would much rather, and great box out, by the way. Let's go back to that clip right here. We talk about boxing out, finds a body, goes after it, doesn't get the board, but his teammate does because of that box out. Great box out. And, you know, his teammate's already in the post, so he's trying to space for him. But like, you know, we don't need that shot.
Yeah. My favorite, Corey, like I love, as you mentioned, that box out is great. I also think it's hilarious that the guy that was getting boxed out was just flailing, thinking like he even had a chance to get the ball. Always hilarious stuff. But no, I'm with you, Corey. And I think, like I said before, I think anywhere from 1 to 3 attempts per game, more than enough. More than enough. You know, if he can be 35% on like 2 attempts per game, sign me up. That's incredible. From a 7-1 guy with his athletic ability and what he, you know, what he's going to be asked to do, you know, 80-90% of the time. If he can hit a couple per game, 1 or 2 per game, that's more than enough, man. And that makes him that. I mean, straight up, that makes him terrifying, Corey. I really do. Like, if he's going to do that and hit that shot that you're playing right now on the screen consistently, that is a terrifying prospect, and a guy that should be, in my opinion, if he continues to do this in the NBL, should be cementing himself in that top 3 conversation, like no question. So I'm with you. I think the volume is important. The quality of the shot is important, and his willingness, right? Like we've seen, as you mentioned, Corey, he's not shy about it. So if he keeps taking them, and then what he can do in the post and what he can do in transition, which was pretty crazy too. That's so much free. It's scary. It's scary stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing with his shot that has made me really buy into the touch, man, these turnaround middies, man. What the hell? Like, this is the stuff that you're like, these are the KG shots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in this area where, oh, I got a smaller guy on me. All right, let me just smooth little turnaround. And this is not an aberration for him. This is, again, something that he's shooting with confidence and knocking down at like a good clip. So, you know, I mean, he's playing with this confidence and this freedom. And I think he touched on the fact that he's being featured more now than he was in the OTE, which is interesting because the OTE, you know, is this development league that seems perfect for a guy like him to, you know, experiment like that. But it seems like this is the place that he's had that freedom and he doesn't have to second guess. And he's able to do crazy stuff like these turnaround mid-range shots, which on top of, the 3-point shot, you go, okay, maybe a legit shooter, and the footwork there. And the footwork.
And Court, can I say, like, because we've watched Victor and Chet and Mobley the last couple of seasons, I almost feel like our eyes are getting used to guys that are that gigantic that they don't seem that big. But when you see Sarr like in the mid post and he's like reaching out one of his ladder arms, it is pretty amazing, like how gigantic he is. And so just to, piggyback off of what you're saying, Corey, if he can do that, where he's catching in that mid post area, can turn over either shoulder, hit a little mid range fade, that's really tantalizing stuff. So I'm with you. It's crazy to think that he's 7'1". Even as I'm watching this clip right now, he kind of looks 6'9", 6'10" to me, but he is actually very much that gigantic. And look at that move, dude. Spinning over right shoulder. Like, he missed it, but the fact that he has the desire and he has the courage to even try a shot like that, it's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, like it looks good. Like, he just missed.
Exactly.
It's a tough shot. Like, don't get me wrong, he shouldn't be shooting a ton of those. You know what I mean? And but he's confident, and I think there's no more confident possession for him than this next one that I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. Does a good job, runs to the rim, gets out in transition. Now he's gonna flash, space the floor, attack.
Yep.
Oh, a little step back in the mid range off the attack. I mean, he's feeling confident and he's making stuff happen, and I can't hate on it. It's working right now.
I'm just kind of admiring the shot once again. This is kind of insane, dude. And once again, 7'1". Who's gonna block that shot, man? That's a really hard shot to defend at his size and with his mobility. Also, shouts to Perth, man. Those jerseys go crazy, man. I don't mind that at all. That's beautiful. Got to get our hands on one of those. But no, I'm with you, Corey. If this continues to happen, right, and we're talking about trajectory, we're talking about development, we're talking about his experience in the NBL. If he continues to work on these types of shots and he keeps taking them and he keeps making them, it's going to be really hard to not have him at number one by the end of all this. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, man.
It's not crazy at all, because we talk about all this crazy stuff that he does, right? But it's also like he has a baseline floor level of skills that makes him valuable too, where it's like he doesn't have to develop a lot of that stuff because he's going to be able to do the big man stuff too. Like, we're watching him do all this perimeter stuff with the shooting, but like, he just as well is going to be able to be in the dunker spot, put a guy on a poster. Shout out to Eric Micah getting in there, Team USA legend, willing to contest that shot, and he does his thing. You know what I mean? Like, he has this stuff in his bag where he's going to be able to not only get some of that inefficient stuff up, those shot attempts, those hard shot attempts, but also some of the stuff that is going to allow him to score efficiently too. And he hasn't been the most efficient guy so far this season. You definitely want to see a little bit more of this, where he is running pick and roll. He is diving to the rim, even if he's not throwing down a poster. You know what I mean? He's playing a little bit like a big man here. And I think him mixing up when he's going to be a guy who dives, when he's going to be a guy who is running to the rim and scoring at the rim like a big, like I think that's when he's going to be really effective, when he's using the outside stuff as like a real weapon instead of something he's relying on all the time. Because I think he's shown real nice touch. Like, this is the footwork, the touch, the extension. I mean, I want to pause the clip at the top of his extension here, right? Gets real good position, and then
that's crazy.
It's just a really hard shot to block because he's up in the air and then he's so long. Like, you're not going to get a good contest on that. And the fact that he's able to spin so smoothly, so quickly, on top of how high his release is, like, he can get this anytime he wants. So, like, I don't want him settling for that outside stuff when he could do a little bit of this too. I just want him mixing it up and having a real variety in how he's scoring.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Corey, I'm with you, and I think that's why, like, it kind of goes back to what we talked about before. Like, even just his floor is so high, right? He can do all the Tyson Chandler stuff, that young Tyson Chandler stuff that you would hope that he can do. He's got great touch. I think that one really stuck out to me watching him. I will say though, Corey, I'm with you. Like, I also would like to see him take more free throws. Also, he's currently shooting at like 52.4% from the line, which is not great, right? But also, like, I just like to see him get more physical, get down there a little bit more, mix in more of the big man stuff, like you just mentioned, right? Like the shot diet, maybe a little bit less of the outside stuff, but also, like, we get it. And we had when we did LaMelo a couple of years back, like LaMelo did all the nasty, sloppy stuff in the NBL and got out of his system, or not all out of his system, but he made a lot of mistakes and he did a lot of crazy things. And I think maybe that could be something that Sarr kind of explores too, right? Where he tries new things and he gets aggressive with things that maybe he won't usually do. But it's a lot to be excited because that floor is so strong with him. He's going to be able to, as you mentioned, do all the big man stuff that you're looking for him to do as, on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I really hope that he's allowed to attack the offensive glass.
Yeah,
because I think that quick second jump is just really beneficial for somebody like him who can get up off the floor and thrive on like putback slams, like we see there. We're gonna see again in this clip, like the length, him getting up, throwing it down. You see him, he gets amped. Like this is the stuff that I really want to see from him. And you combine it now with the fact that he can get out in transition, and he's creating a little bit of stuff at the rim himself too, and it's like, whew. Now this one got me out of my seat when I saw it. Yeah. It's like semi transition, but that little pickup right there, he must have been working with the Thompson twins because he looks like one of the Thompsons in this clip. Like I'm gonna pause it right when. Let me see if I can get it right here in between.
That's insane.
Look how low he gets with this pickup to keep and protect the ball, and then smoothly finishes. Like he's able to decelerate there. Special, man.
The first time I saw this clip, I was like, what is that? What are we even talking about, man? Like that should not happen. That's not a normal human thing to be that gigantic, moving at that speed, and the little in and out pound dribble gather. That's sick stuff, man.
Dude, like Chet and Mobley weren't doing that stuff.
Oh, God.
And look, it's going to be hard for somebody to kind of take the Chet spot in my heart.
Yeah.
I love Chet. He looked really good in that first preseason game. But he's got some stuff.
We could play this clip just the rest of the pod and I'd be really happy with it. I mean, I'm with you, Corey. Like we both love Chet. Chet, a guy I got to see in person. Just insane, and I'm really excited for him in his rookie season. But like this type of stuff, like look at that, dude. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking? 7-1, dude. 7-1, and what you talked about, right? With like the dexterity, the fluidity, the flexibility. It's just like this is crazy stuff, man. This is fantastic. I don't even know.
He's a really, really fun prospect, man. And I'm excited to see how the rest of his season goes because he started out hot and he's clearly benefited from the fact that this is the only basketball that we have to watch right now, right? Like but it's his play. It's not just because we're starving and fiending for something that we're just like, oh, every single guy in this league is awesome, which we're doing a little bit, but like he's the real deal. Yeah. And all of that this guy's theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
He's put into practice this year early on. So it's really exciting in that regard.
Oh, like you said, Corey, once we start seeing Zach Edey post-ups again, our tune might change, but he's fun.
Hey,
dude.
man.
He's fun.
Look, I saw Edey live.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is one of the craziest human beings I've ever seen. because he also moves really, really well for a guy his size.
It was I saw a tweet today that some couple in Colorado took a video. They think they found Bigfoot walking around. I'm like, dude, nah, that's Zach Eady, bro. We already have the Bigfoot. What are we talking about?
Oh man! All right, look, I think we're excited about Sarr, to say the least, and
Crap,
we've been going on Sarr for a while, and we were going to go and cover 3 guys in this breakdown, but I hit Albert up. I was like, I think we got to cut one of these guys because I think we're going to go a little long. So we're going to move on after this quick break to talk about somebody from the G League Ignite. All right, we are back, and we are here to talk about Mattis Buzelis of the G League Ignite. Played his high school ball at Sunrise Christian with Scotty Middleton, who we covered on the show earlier in the summer. Buzelis is somebody who is coming into the season with a ton of season hype, potential number 1 pick. I believe he was even the number 1 pick on one of the Gavoni mock drafts coming into the year. So, this is a guy that has a lot of really high expectations coming into the year. And he's a guy who we've seen a little bit of, and I think he's left everybody wanting more. He didn't play in the 3 games in the FIBA Intercontinental Cup. So I think he had an ankle injury. So, you look at his counting stats in the Ignite games and you go, man, he balled out. But I think that if you watch the full games, there's a nuance there that, we kind of need to break down.
Yeah, Corey, so we had a lot of fun talking about Alex Sarr, and I think our tune's going to change a little bit here with Buzelis. And I'm not trying to preface what we're about to say by saying, we're going to be all negative and whatever. I just don't think he is, for me, he shouldn't be in the number 1 conversation is how I feel right now. Currently on my board, I have him at number 15, and that might be really low for a lot of people that are listening to this pod right now, but I feel pretty strong in my conviction about it. But I'm ready. I'm ready to have a conversation with you, Corey. I actually don't know where he's on your board, so don't want to assume anything. But I think, as you mentioned, Corey, there are some aspects of his game that don't exactly correlate to the numbers, especially counting stats and stuff like that. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I think I have him at 8 right now.
Sure.
Now I think when we did the Scotty Middleton episode, that I said that Middleton was the best prospect on Sunrise Christian. And, I meant that. I've been a little bit, I want to say I've been lower on Buzelis, but I've been just wait and see with him because if you watch the Sunrise Christian tape, it just never popped in the way you really wanted it to. He was another guy that had a bunch of skills that you saw and was very toolsy and, had some fun flashes of what he could be. Right. I think when you look at his play style, as he's, 6'10", maybe 6'11", 6'9", who knows? I think he's listed at 6'11". If he really is, good for him. It's great. Right. But he's a guy who has a smooth stroke. He has some ball skills, and he's looked at like he has a little bit of feel because he's shown some passing flashes. And I think people look at him maybe and see Franz Wagner. And I can't help but think, though, that he could be the Andrea Bargnani to Franz's Dirk.
Yeah.
Because it's an archetypical thing where you're like, I think because Franz worked, I see that too. But, even Franz was a guy that people didn't expect to be as good as he has turned into already in the league, right? It's just been because so with Buzelis now, we see something similar. I just don't want people to fall into the trap that he's the same player as Franz, because he isn't.
Corey, you just mentioned Andrea Bargnani. In my notes, I wrote Darko. The reason why I wrote Darko is because it's along the same line of logic as you just said. People have him kind of ranked at like around number one or at number one on their boards right now. If Buzelis were to go number one in this draft class, I think it could have an absolute Darko effect on his career where things could really go awry. In my opinion, I think best case scenario for his future and NBA career is for him to go like mid to late lottery. I think if he goes number one, I think he's not going to be able to live up to that draft slot. And I think it might have a really negative effect on his career, his mentality, his psyche, all those things, which is why I wrote Darko, because Darko was the same thing, right? When Darko was drafted, everyone thought, oh, next Dirk, next whoever. And that clearly wasn't the case. And his career took a nosedive, right? And that is my fear with Buzelis. I don't want our listeners to think that I'm saying that I think Buzelis sucks. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think where he is right now in his development, I don't think it's good enough for him to be in that conversation around pick number 1 to even number 5. Like, I think he's so far away that he should be a lot lower. But like you said, Corey, he is a multifaceted player. He has a lot of skills, and that's kind of the main reason why people are talking about him in that range. But my biggest fear is that if he goes in that range, it might ruin his whole career.
So I think that there is also a safety to him. And that's why we're looking at him, in this range. There is also because he can shoot, right? And we'll start there. Like, I think he's very clearly going to be a good shooter. He's got a smooth stroke. He was like 40% at Sunrise Christian. He's tall. He's got a high release. I think that he's going to be a guy that you can put in catch and shoot scenarios or pick and pop scenarios, and he's going to be able to space the floor. And that could be, a day one skill for him. And when I talk about safety, I think a lot of that comes from that. Like, he's initiating the offense here, and then he's going to go run out, and eventually he's going to be the play finisher. So, there is most certainly that outcome and that safety where that's a great thing to have. It's almost like, Mike Dunleavy Jr. was the 3rd pick in the draft, right? And he maybe isn't typically what you would expect ceiling wise from him, but that was a dude who was a real hooper who played in the NBA for 15 plus years. Like, he definitely provided that value. And I think Buzelis could ultimately provide that same value as well. But again, if he does have those expectations of being the guy in this class, and I think that's waned, because I think that, Sarr has really popped. Holland absolutely popped. Like, this is another guy that I feel much better about now than I did, when we did his breakdown earlier in the summer. But with Buzelis, it's like, if you're talking about safety nets after that, we'll see who stands out from the pack. Because, while he isn't a guy that is impact, you're going to feel his presence on the court, Buzelis is a guy who he's probably going to be really efficient, and he's going to show skills as a big guy who can play with the ball in his hands. There's value in safety in that too.
Yeah, Corey, I definitely hear that. And also, speaking to impact, he may not be a ferocious guy, but his impact can be felt on the floor just because he might bend that defense, with that shooting that you're talking about, right? He might be so much of a threat with his outside shot that defenses have to, be mindful of that, and obviously be, more wary of that weak side and all that stuff. So I'm with you, man. My biggest concern was that draft range for a guy like him, and something, Corey, I think that we can see just from the film, and we haven't talked to him, haven't even met him yet, right? But he's not he doesn't feel like an alpha, a guy that's looking to take over games, even during Geico Nationals, during tense moments, big moments in the game. He didn't feel like he was stepping up and asking for the ball, looking to go create something, make an impact. So not knowing what type of character he has, just that draft slot kind of made me concerned. But yeah, if he ends up at 7, 9, I think that would be kind of the sweet spot in my mind for him to have a little bit less of that pressure of, because like a lot of it also, Corey, comes from casuals, right? Like comes from people like Stephen A. Smith, not to hate on Stephen A. Smith. Obviously the man does incredible things, but like he's not watching these games. And when draft time comes around, he's gonna be like, oh, who's this Buzelis kid? Why is he going number one? And he's gonna shit on him. And then it's gonna get into Buzelis's ear, and who knows? Like these guys are still kids, and I'm concerned about the effect that has on their psyche and stuff like that. But in terms of like his skill set and his ability on the floor, Corey, I'm with you. This is a guy that has a lot of skills and can be a really interesting player if everything kind of pans out.
Now, the thing I'm worried about with him is the mischaracterization of who he is, because I think that's something that contributes. It's like he's getting characterized as a 6'10", 11 guy who can really handle the ball, and he's like a 6'10" guy who can handle the ball well, but he can't really handle the ball. Like he's not a ball handler. You know what I mean? Like he's a little stiff a lot of times. He's comfortable. He's not going to dribble the ball off his foot. Like he's really fluid in his movements in a straight line. But because he's a little stiff and he doesn't have that like kind of wiggly flexibility, we see him thrive off plays like this where it's broken plays. He has more space because it's a broken play. And, the defense isn't necessarily set. And when he's in these settings, he looks really great because he can attack in this space and see where the help is coming from. It's when the defense is set in a half court and he has to start getting a little bit more creative that he kind of starts to look like he's not the ball handler that he's being billed as. And, I think that's okay for sure. Like, because there's still value in this. He's going to be used in a lot of interesting actions. He'll be used, in DHOs. I'll pull a clip up of that right now, and that'll allow him to get downhill without having to create for himself, because he didn't even do that at Sunrise Christian, where he was like going straight ISO. Like a lot of it was, with a screen or coming off of an off ball action like this. And look, you show this clip, and you're like, oh my God, like at 6'11", like, behind the back, and then like the footwork, the, same foot, the opposite foot, it's a really, really slick play. So like he has these moments where he does look super fluid, but he's also got this stiffness side to side that is where the issue comes. And that's why I don't think he's creative enough to be like a number one guy. But if you're slotting him in the back half of the top 10, it's a guy who's going to be efficient and be able to score like this while, maybe doing some other stuff. That's where I can see the vision for it.
I'm with you. I hear that. I think for me, Corey, like something that I wrote here in my notes is even when he makes a nice move, it doesn't necessarily look that nice. Was kind of how I felt at times. Which here, look, like this move does look good. It does look good. I'll give him credit for that. But I just don't think it's going to happen consistently enough. And like even like you compare like the name that's going to come up a lot is Franz, right? For a million different reasons, right? But even with Franz, like there is that strength, and I think his physique was different from Matas as well. And I think there's like a change of pace to Franz that is really interesting and helps him kind of get to where he's going. But with Matas, like I think there needs to be a lot more work. And I don't know, Corey, just like going back to the Sunrise stuff, like watching his games, sometimes I'm just like, where the hell is this guy? Like, I just felt like he went MIA a lot. And that type of stuff scares me. And that type of stuff leads me to think like, oh, that's the Tobias Harris effect, right? He's more of a number 2, number 3 guy rather than a guy that you're looking to kind of be the hub of your offense. And so, yeah, I'm with you, Corey. Like, I think I'm trying to be positive too. I'm not trying to hate on the kid, but Tobias Harris is a really solid NBA player that's made a lot of money in the NBA. So that's not necessarily a bad thing either.
No, if you can be Tobias Harris, shout out Long Island legend Tobias Harris, right, by the way, then that's an incredible outcome. But touching on him, even at Sunrise, kind of going MIA, there's that lack of willingness to take over, dominate, to go out. Even here in this beautiful up and under finish, he's avoiding the contact, right? We look at some of the Sunrise clips, as a finisher, you get a little nervous. Like, he's backing away from contact here. Like, that's Gus Yalden. He's a big dude, at the rim. Like, he's a guy that's going to get in your way, but he's clearly like shying away from the contact, not trying to draw fouls, not trying to be a guy who is going to get those extra points at the line. He's, moving away from the defender. So yeah, the concerns in that regard are legit, because, we see that here in the Sunrise clips, and now, we go and see some of the Ignite clips, and here he is getting to the rim, and he's fading away again. So this is a trend. These are not isolated incidents. This is just who he is right now as a player, and it's a mentality thing, right? Like, even, he gets the rebound and he shies away from the contact again there at the end. So this is the mentality, and I think it's something that I don't know if it can be taught.
Yeah. And Corey, you the funniest thing is this clip that you're showing, I'm pretty sure this happened twice in that same game, where there was one where he went up for a layup, absolutely bricked it. I think it was Almanza that grabbed the rebound for him, went up again and bricked it again. And I'm just like, and it's the same thing, right? Where he's fading away from the contact, not looking at, draw a foul or anything. You just go like, hey man, that's not great. And there are a lot of different reasons for it, right? Like his physicality, he has to bulk up a little bit, but even if he does bulk up, like if he doesn't have that in him, he kind of doesn't have that in him, is kind of how I feel. And also for a guy that is afraid of contact, I didn't necessarily feel like, from anything that I saw, I didn't feel like he had like a great floater or, a little push shot or anything like that either, which just, it's more concern.
Now, look, we got to balance this out a little bit. I don't want people to get too concerned. And I think he can, do some nice stuff as a cutter off the ball. And I think that, with all of the talent on this team, it's something that he's going to do a lot, and he's going to thrive. And, because we're talking and questioning the dog in him, give me that. Give me that. Let's sign the poster right now.
I'm going to stare too after. Good for you, bud.
So like, this is good that there's a flash here, but again, this is him coming off ball and he's loading up with momentum here, right? Like, it's not the same as him as a downhill driver. It's a little bit different in how he can load up. So I mean, look, I think in this regard, and as an off ball guy who's going to be able to do stuff like that, I think it's great. Otherwise, I think it's going to be mostly broken plays, in which there isn't real help at the rim. Because when there's help at the rim, look, we showed it a little bit earlier. Let's look at another angle, from a different angle than the one we saw earlier when we were looking at it as a positive for Sarr. He's going to get stuffed at the rim twice here by Alex Sarr, who's a guy that, we were raving about. So if you think, we mentioned 4 guys like Sarr, or 4 guys including Sarr that we mentioned that have just come in the last few years. There are already a bunch of guys who protect the rim in the NBA. So I think that's going to be a major, major adjustment for Buzelis. And, I think him getting, at least, more physical guys in the G League this year, it will be beneficial for him in the long run. But, he's going to have to realize he can't rely on the skill. And even if that second spin there, like, that's a nifty little spin, that footwork there, it is sick. And if it wasn't Sarr, if it was just a regular G League dude, maybe he's not able to, or maybe he gets the second shot off even after he gets blocked. Right. And I like the mentality. All right, I got blocked, whatever, I'll still go up again. But you could tell he's not moving Sarr with his body there. He goes into his body. He doesn't move Sarr, and Sarr, we said, needs to get stronger himself. So, Buzelis really, really, really needs to get stronger and really focus on, like, okay, how do I handle the physicality?
I think 2 things that I want to mention here, Corey. First, credit to Buzelis. This is a good cut right here, man. Really good cut there. Obviously, he gets blocked twice, so that sucks. But also in that previous clip, when he goes for the poster, a certain Mr. Sarr wasn't in the game, And I think, and I'm genuinely trying not to hate, But these are all things that I think are really important for us to note. And I think I'm right there with you. I think there is a strength and a mentality that he doesn't have. And on the other end of on the other side of the coin, Almanza here was a guy that I actually enjoyed watching more than Buzelis in some of the games. I felt like the way that he was kind of throwing himself around and diving into the basket was, pretty good. But yeah, with Buzelis, man, I think it's a mentality thing. I also would like to see him continue to add to his frame, which I don't think is impossible, right? So I think that'll be interesting to watch and to see how he just kind of progresses through the season and how he handles more of this type of physicality.
Yeah, I think he's got big, broad shoulders. So,
Yeah.
I think the frame stuff is definitely going to come. Now, the other reason that he's getting compared, I think, to a guy like Franz or these jumbo creators is because people look at him as a guy who they think maybe is going to be able to initiate offense, become a passer. Now, we didn't see a lot of that in these Ignite games. This is a pretty nifty little quick decision drop off here. Sees Sarr coming over, maybe gets a little intimidated because he doesn't want to get his shit sent, but he's able to make that kind of baseline, really quick read, drop off to Micah here. So he has some passing ability, but I don't want people to mistake it because even at Sunrise Christian, he had 20 something more turnovers than assists. So while he does show flashes of passing, and I think because of his height and because he does have decent vision, I think people are going to think that that's going to be a big part of his game. And I just don't know if it is because I don't think he's a great decision maker, even if he makes good passes sometimes.
Corey, that was amazing. I couldn't agree with you more what you just said because
I appreciate it.
The reason why I'm so low on Buzelis is because of the Sunrise stuff. It's not even like the G League stuff. I'm like reading other people talk about his playmaking, and I'm like, where the hell was that at Sunrise? Like, I watched a ton of his games at Sunrise, and I'm like, he didn't do that shit. I was like looking for it, like trying to find him being an initiator. Dear God, that was hard to say. A creator, and it was just like, I didn't see that. And as you mentioned, Corey, like flashes are there, sure, right? Like, in my opinion, Corey, like you did him a great service by even showing that G League clip. Like, how impressive was that pass? It wasn't that impressive.
It wasn't that impressive.
He was afraid of Sarr, so he dumps it off to Micah, and Micah, goes up for a nice layup. Good for him. He's not making the league right now. No hate to Eric Micah, but it is what it is. And I'm just like, I wasn't impressed at all. And like the France stuff bothered me. Okay, cool. This is a nice pass for sure. But did this happen consistently on a game-to-game basis? Absolutely not. So for me, I was like, please, and I wrote it in my notes, throw the Franz comparisons out. It's just not there. Like, I don't believe that at all. Like, this is an anomaly. This was not the norm for him.
Well, the other thing too here is that, again, this is not like a set. It's not in the half court, like, or it's, it's not a set play. It's not everybody's back. It's kind of semi-transition. Mm-hmm. People are trying to find their man. And because he's got that height and because he does have good, vision at times, he's able to make this pass. Like he's skilled. So the passes look slick when he makes them, right? So he sees the cut, makes a good read, places it in a really nice spot. Like there's potential there for him to be a kind of connecting piece. It's when he's got to try to initiate more and not read and react. That's when I start to get worried because I think that in these more half-court settings, right? So I'm going to play this clip here. When things are slowed down, defenses are set, I think that there's a lot more struggles here. So, even coming off of this off ball, the DHO stuff, he doesn't really have a plan because he's not super creative with a handle. He dribbles into the defense a lot, right? Now we see like there's 3 blue shirts, potentially 4 that can crash on him. He picks his dribble up, gets stuck in no man's land, tries to force it, and turns it over. So like he doesn't always play with the kind of feel that you want from a guy who you think could be any kind of initiator. So, I think the decision-making aspect is something that's going to be really, really, really important for him going forward, showing that he's going to be any kind of passer. Because one, I think that he doesn't necessarily have the strength to get into the teeth of the defense consistently. Right there, he's just getting stripped and bodied up. So he's turning it over there. That's not a playmaking thing, but if you're getting into the paint there and you're looking at a guy who can pass, like that's how deep you want a guy to get or start to get, and potentially, and him put his shoulder down and then potentially hit Little off, realizing a guy's going to come over, dig at him. Little's going to be open in the corner if he doesn't lose control of the ball, right? So these are scenarios that he's going to be presented with all the time, and it's things that he hasn't shown consistently enough yet, but maybe not looked at as a guy as a number one option. Holland is looked at as the number one option there. London Johnson's running the offense. Maybe in those scenarios, he's going to be able to show a little bit more of the playmaking chops as a ancillary guy rather than the guy that was looked at as the number one option.
Yeah, Corey, that's the most important point you made. I think that's where he has to land. I think we need to start looking at him as an ancillary guy, as a number 3, number 4 option type of guy. And Corey, going back to what you said before, beyond just the lack of creativity in his handle, I just don't think his handle's that good. It feels really loose to me. It feels really like I think he's always in danger. I feel like guys like Drew Holiday and Marcus Smart are just gonna be licking their lips when he gets into an NBA game later on. Like if his handle stays the same, I think that type of stuff is dangerous and stuff he's gonna have to tighten up. But to counter all of what I'm saying right now, if he's not looked at as a number 1 option, if he is looked at as a number 2, number 3, number 4 option in an offense, right, a connector type of piece, then I think my tune would change a lot. I think the reason why I'm being so critical, the reason why I'm being so hard on him right now is because I absolutely don't think he should be viewed as a number 1 option. I think if an NBA team drafts him looking to make him their number 1 option, I think they're setting him up for failure. I just don't think he has that in him. And I think it goes beyond the strength. It goes beyond the lack of creativity. I think it's everything. I think it's a mentality thing as well.
For sure. And, now we got to touch on the defense a little bit. And, I think that it's going to be there's going to be up and down moments for him. Because I don't think he's a train wreck as a defender.
No.
But again, I think the mentality that he shows as a defender is similar to how he is as an offensive player, where like there's a lack of physicality to it. And I think relying on skill a lot of time is going to be harmful when it comes to like guys who are like, all right, I'm just going to come at you one-on-one. Now, I think this is a good possession for him from a team aspect. He's going to be, he's guys are kind of switching off. He's going to tag Sarr here on the roll, get back to his man, and then use his length to get a good contest. Like that's a good defensive play for Buzelis there. And because he can get down in a stance, he can move his feet. He's got, good length. I think that he has potential there. But even when he's able to stay in front, and I'm going to put this next clip, he doesn't, really close the kind of distance you need. He just is a little laissez, he's not gonna, like, if he really bodied up here and pushed and he like dictated the possession there instead of letting the offensive player get into his chest and move him because he has the size advantage, that's a much tougher shot for him. It's just a little soft.
Yeah. And Corey, for me, that we talked about it on the offensive side of the ball, but like there's a real stiffness to him, man. And like I think that's something, I have stiff hips too, so I'm working on it, and I believe that he can work on it as well. But it's just, and I think he gets caught flat-footed a lot. And I think like with him, I think Corey, you nailed it. You nailed it on the head. Like I think it is a mentality thing with him. And once again, like I just don't know if that gets fixed. And I'm really trying not to be a hater, but it's something he's got to work on. It's something he has to improve upon. I think even on the defensive side of the ball, also, he's not going to be a guy that you're asking to guard their best player every single night. But at the same time, I'm with you, Corey. I don't think he's a train wreck. I do think there, are some flashes. Obviously, there was that big block that he had in that Perth game, the second game. And so, there are things that he can do with his size and his athletic ability, with his length. But I think there is still an overall stiffness to him, and also a lack of aggression that I would like to see him kind of work on.
Yeah, and guys are going to go at him. They're going to try. They're going to attack him. Like you said, he has, good tools to also kind of, recover and make up for the fact that sometimes, he'll get blown by, or as we'll see on this possession, he loves to bite on a good pump fake. Like that's one of his favorite things, is biting on pump fakes. And he does it here, but because he's got good length, he's able to recover and use that length to get a hand on the ball from behind there. So, I think his size does allow him. And again, he did a good job tagging the diver there.
Yeah.
So at least he has conceptually some stuff he's picking up on. So that's a really good sign. And having these recovery tools is definitely better than not having the recovery tools. You also, you mentioned that, he's had a couple of blocks at the rim, and, I think he's going to get a few of those, because I do think he has like good timing and anticipation on stuff at the rim, and using his length and being able to move like that. So, he is not like without tools. He's not hopeless on that end, and I don't think you're not going to be able to target him. Even if you go at him, you're not going to be able to target him the way you are going to be able to target a guy who's like 6'1". Yeah. But he's still got a long way to go on this end.
The only thing I can think of with Buzelis, he just reminds me of like a Snapchat video. You have it for a second and then it disappears, and it's just not there anymore. And I know that sounds harsh, but I also believe that that's something he can change. Like, that's, in my opinion, Corey, that's up to him. Like, that's not up to anything else. Like, he can change that himself. He could change that narrative. He could change my mind and your mind by just doing it more consistently. And also, I want to say I love our listeners, and I love the comments that you guys put in here. But saying that OKC is going to trade Josh Giddey for him that's amazing stuff, guys. I hate that so much. Josh Giddey's 21, guys. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be fantastic and a big part of what OKC is doing. And I don't see Buzelis being an upgrade over Giddey at all.
No, I think that was probably said a little bit in jest by our guy, Gregory Castillo. But definitely shout out to all the people watching live. If you haven't yet, make sure that you hit the like button and hit the subscribe button for the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel, because we have a lot of film breakdowns, a lot of highlights, a lot of who knows what coming at you. I think there's going to be new shows on the feed. So make sure that you're locked in to the channel by subscribing and showing your support and showing up to these live streams. I know Steven and Maxwell with Draft Sickos have started going live on Sunday nights. Rucker and Metcalf have started going live as well. So, a lot of our shows are live. You can hang out with us, a few times a week live in person, and participate in, the conversation by chatting along. So shout out to all the listeners, shout out to all the people that have been locked in with No Ceilings, and all of our new friends as well, because it's going to be a fun year.
It's going to be a crazy year. But just to kind of close things with Matas, Corey, I do want to reiterate, I feel like where he gets taken is so important to me. Obviously, I don't know, people could feel otherwise. I just worry. I'm just worried for him is what it is. It's not that I'm hating on him. I'm genuinely worried for him. I'd like to see him become a really productive NBA player. Even comparing him to Tobias Harris, that guy's made hundreds of millions of dollars in the NBA. And I'd love to see that happen for Matas Buzelis as well. It's just right now, from what I've seen, I feel like he's a bit a ways away, and I'm worried about where he gets taken. But if he gets taken in a good spot, let's say he gets taken 8th in the draft, I'm going to feel a lot better for him, and I'll feel really excited for him.
Yeah, he's look, I think he's an easy guy to slot into your roster. And I think that stylistically he's going to be able to fit in a lot of places. So I don't know how many, spots are going to be bad fits for him. Luckily, I think that if you look at, all of the teams that you're anticipating probably being towards the top of the lottery, they all have, their number one guy. Right. Save for maybe Washington. So that would be bad. But, like all the other teams, Detroit has Cade, right? Portland just drafted Scoot. The Rockets, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Şengün, Amen, Cam, Victor in the Spurs, LaMelo and Brandon Miller with the Hornets. Like, no matter where you look, teams are loaded with number one options. So I don't think that Matas is going to have that kind of pressure that he needs to step in and be the number one option. But like you said, draft slot does put pressure on prospects. And that could affect your career because it gives you an expectation. So even though this draft is going to be talked about as far as, top high end talent, as if there is, it's weaker. And we've said that on the show. It doesn't mean the draft's not going to be fun. It doesn't mean guys aren't going to step up. But this perception is that it's going to be a little weaker, but that didn't stop us from roasting Anthony Bennett, right? That was a draft without a number one pick. Somebody shot their shot with Anthony Bennett, and we know how that we know how that went. So ultimately I think that Matas is going to be a guy who thrives as, that third option. And if he could be your third option as a guy who's 6'10", 6'11", who could play with the ball in his hands, make a connective read coming off of off-ball actions, cut, space the floor, then I think that you're looking at a really effective draft pick. And I don't think that's a guy that you want to draft in the top 3 necessarily. But I think that is a guy that is somebody you could draft in the top 10. And if he goes in that 8 range, something like that, I think that would be a great spot where he could develop at his own pace, with an organization that has a real plan for his development. So, but I think that, you look at his numbers, you look at his efficiency, even in games that he wasn't super impactful in because you didn't feel his presence the same way you felt Alex Sarr, the same way you felt Ron Holland. This is still a kid who shot the ball really well and had some really nice flashes on drives. And, I think he's going to have a solid year down in the G League, which is really hard. Scoot wasn't efficient at all. Jalen Green wasn't efficient at all. It's hard down there to have that solid season. I think he's got a shot at it, and that counts for something too. So it's not like he isn't a really talented guy. I don't want anyone to get that impression. It's just, if we're putting expectations on him that he's going to be the number one pick, maybe because we see what Franz looks like in that role. Again, I think that's how we get our Andre Bargnanis. Bargnani was never going to be Dirk.
Yeah.
And drafting just because you also wanted a big man 7-footer that could shoot threes, you're never going to get that carbon copy. There's so much more that goes into it than just the skill set. So anyway, I think I'm a little higher on Matas than some of the people at No Ceilings are, just because I'm trying not to lose sight of the fact that he does have not even you. I think some of the other guys have also hit the panic meter a little bit. And I think it's fair when we look at him as the number one guy. But if we're strictly going, all right, well, what if he's not a number one guy? Then what? I still think there's a lot to like.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Corey. I think if anything, I think I have him where I have him right now, just almost as like a market correction type of thing, just like wanting to set expectations and standards a little bit lower to protect him, if anything. And I think that's the main thing I'm trying to portray here for our listeners is that this is not one of those things where I'm hoping he fails. It genuinely is me being concerned for him and wanting him to reach that 1% outcome or 2% outcome, whatever, and I think that outcome only happens if he isn't taken number one, is how I genuinely feel. And so that's kind of why I've said what I said. But overall, I couldn't agree more with everything you said about all his positives as well. There were flashes of all kinds of things with this game. He's a very, very talented player with multiple talents. So, yeah, I just wanted to close with that.
All right. And with that said, we're back. And this is our return episode. We went an hour and 25 minutes.
We missed it, is what it is.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We really, really did. And now that No Ceilings is back full time, 5 days a week on the website, on the podcast feeds, on your YouTubes, man, it's exciting. This is always, the lead up to the college season, the lead up to the NBA season is always the time that there's so much anticipation. And the fact that we've just gotten some teasers with the NBL season and some of the international competition, the G League showcase, it's been a really good appetizer, and I'm ready for the main course.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Corey. It's been this off season felt really long and longer even than the other off seasons we've had. But at the same time, Corey, like we talked about, we kind of needed this break. And it's been really good being back. Congrats to you once again for becoming a homeowner. How awesome is that? I maybe bought some more sneakers this summer, so I'm not doing so great. But shouts to you, Corey, on being a homeowner. That's such an incredible thing to do. Happy for you and your wife and your family and Gypsy especially.
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, Gypsy's stoked. She's got a lot of windows to look out now, because that's really the only thing that cats want is to eat food and look out into the sun.
And scratch up couches, right?
Yeah. We got the protection plan on the couch.
Good.
Albert, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter is where you can find me. I don't even know if I mentioned this last year, Corey, but during last season, I actually hit 1,000 followers on Twitter, which was like a big deal for me. Like when we first started No Ceilings, I had like 70 followers or like 100. So to be at 1,000 feels surreal. And I know it's like a small number, but whatever. Like it's something that I've always struggled with in terms of like getting more followers. But that was exciting. And you can find me on Instagram at GTGNBA as well, is where you can find me on the World Wide Web.
Follow Albert if you haven't already. I mean, especially if you like, English football. If you like the draft and soccer,
yeah,
it's a great follow. You can follow me at Corey Tulliba. You can follow the No Ceilings crew at No Ceilings NBA. Again, like, subscribe, rate, review, all of that fun stuff. Until next time, thank you for rocking with us, everybody. We are out. Peace.